the Dream 100 Show. The epicenter of influence, collaboration, and exponential growth. You're about to discover the power of relationships. Dream 100 relationships. And you're one relationship away from a totally different business and life. This is your host, Michael Tesner.
Hey there, and welcome to episode 9 of the Dream 100 Show. Today we're going to do a bit of a recap, but we're going to laser in on some of the biggest mistakes I see you making day in and day out when you're attempting to deploy the Dream 100 strategy yourself. There are a couple of really critical areas that could completely derail everything that you're doing. Now, as I said to you on the first episode, this strategy has a 100% success rate when deployed correctly. So if you start to deploy it, but you skip this step, or you say, well, Michael, there's an easier way to do X, you're going to take away that 100% success rate, and it's going to start to dwindle very, very quickly. So if I go all the way back to the beginning, one of the first things that you need to do is to establish which of those 3 Dream 100 audiences you're going to go after. So you have the first audience, which is your Dream 100 prospects. So those people, again, should have the ability to do a lot more business with you. Let's say that you're a landscaper, for example. You have your customers, let's say they're residential, that they're paying you $200 a month for weekly lawn care, but then you have your commercial accounts and they're paying you $5,000 a month, for example. You might say, Michael, my Dream 100 prospects are to have 100 plus of those commercial accounts. The second audience would be partners, affiliates, co-op marketing, people that have your Dream 100 audience or a lot of potential prospects on their list already. So, for example, if you were that landscaper, who could you start to look at that would have lists of some of these different commercial places where you're going to be aiming to mow their lawn or have different services? Is there local associations, for example, that you could join? Are there certain places that they're buying things from? Are they all using Jonna King cleaners, for example? Like, you start to look at who already has those people that I'm trying to go after. They don't just have one person within their audience, but they have hundreds that if I were to land that person, they can help introduce me and promote me, and we can have some joint venture relationships together. The third audience would be your Dream 100 press. So depending on if you're going after business locally or nationally, the type of press you're going to be aiming to achieve could be very, very different. But it could be if you're local, I want to be on these 5 radio stations, these 5 TV channels. I want these newspapers to write about me. I want this business newspaper to feature me. What are those Dream 100 press outlets, media outlets, and even potentially influencers that you want to have talk about you or feature you? Now, if you make this next mistake, it's going to be an uphill battle for the remainder of you to deploy this strategy. And the mistake that I see people making day in and day out is they try and go after 2 or 3 of these audiences at the exact same time. Now, I'll give you an asterisk. You can start the press stuff simultaneously, but you would have to do it on a much smaller capacity. Let's call it maybe the Dream 10, for example. It becomes very, very challenging if you say, Michael, I want to come out of the gate swinging. I want to go after prospects, joint ventures, press. I want to go after them all. So your Dream 100 audience ends up being Dream 300, so 100 for each. But if you remember from last week's episode talking about gifting, you can't skip that step. You can't skip it. So if you've now got 300 people that as you're going through and as you start to see positive signs, positive things that start to occur, and you put those gifts in the mail. The gifts can start a little bit smaller, but we talked about not wanting that gift to be too chintzy, where it's perceived as like, what the heck is this? If you don't have deep pockets to execute that level of gifting, you're going to start failing. You're going to start failing. So my suggestion is to make sure you pick one of those three audiences. Now, after you've picked the audience, we talked about doing a lot of research. You need to really understand your business better than you currently do. You need to understand if you're going after the Dream 100 prospects, are those Dream 100 prospects the exact right type of business, right type of person you are going after? If you pick the wrong Dream 100, nothing else matters. You start to execute everything else, and then you start to realize, well, geez, they don't really make up my Dream 100. The commercial accounts, for example, while the money is much larger, our net profit is only 5%, whereas tree trimming or some of these other services that you might offer, you might say, well, the margins on those are like 80%. So we really should have went after those types of people. You have to make sure that you fully understand who you're going after. You've got to do all the research on everything in-house. You have to really analyze your financial books. You have to look at the marketplace. You've got to do all that heavy lifting. And a lot of people skip the step of the heavy lifting. They just say, great, let's just slap a list together. Let's start commenting on their social media, send some gifts, and let's see how things go. That's the wrong way to approach it. This is all done methodically. So as you have your audience picked, I suggested that you start with the joint ventures or people that would be a potential partner. What I love about that particular audience is that they can potentially deliver you hundreds and hundreds of customers on a very rapid basis. Once you get into their good graces, once you get into some kind of relationship with them, it could be game over in a good way. Now, if you think about it in a very, very simple way, and I'll stick with local businesses as an example, but this again applies to anyone that's doing business globally. But it's businesses that start to have maybe co-op marketing together. They say, well, I own a martial arts studio, you own a dance studio. Can we help promote each other a little bit? And it's a little bit of that kind of fusion marketing. And that's what's been done a lot in the past, but they don't realize how big of a potential impact that one relationship could make. So you treat it a little bit passively. Hey, can we put some flyers up in your dojo and you put some up in our dance studio? And that's all that it kind of lands at. Not realizing that, well, geez, that dojo has hundreds and hundreds of families in and out each month. Your dance studio has hundreds and hundreds of families that, well, what if there was a huge population from either side that ended up doing business because you moved that relationship to a much stronger level? Instead of just it being flyers, they're promoting each other on social media. They're doing joint events together. They're doing an open house at the martial arts studio, inviting everyone from the dance studio and vice versa. You really start to expand that relationship. Now you really start to realize, well, geez, that one relationship drove 25% new business from one relationship. So my recommendation is always to start with those fusion partnerships, joint venture partnerships, people that essentially already have the audience that you're looking to go after. Now, the other mistake that people make when they're putting that list together is that they confuse your Dream 100 prospects with this joint venture list. Now, here's what that means. Let's stick with the martial arts studio and the dance studio, okay? And let's say you own the martial arts studio. And if you were putting at a high level before deciding which of those three audiences you were going to go after, you say, well, my Dream 100 people, based on the math, are organizations, so companies, because they end up sending 100 people, for example. Maybe you say it's the birthday parties because they end up doing huge business, and then that ends up turning into other business for you. But your bread and butter are families that are coming in and they're potentially staying at a martial arts studio for years. That's like your bread and butter. So you definitely are typically going to have the 80-20. So maybe it's, again, those corporations, the birthday parties, and that could make up a very large portion of your bigger base. And then you have the stuff that is keeping you busy and paying all the bills, and it's more the quantity. Same thing with the dance studio. You have the bread and butter of the students that are paying a few $100s a month, and then you're going to have some of those Dream 100 families that maybe they're doing 20 dances a month and they're paying you thousands of dollars a month, or maybe they're hiring one-on-one private training. When you look at those joint venture partners, you're going to limit yourself if you say, I want a joint venture fusion partner that also only has people that would make up my Dream 100. The Dream 100 prospects, that is. That list could be very, very small. So if you say, well, I want the corporations, they're doing all the business with us, and then you try and take that a step further and say, great, so I want those people, but I want them in huge quantities. And then you try and identify a partner that has all of those. That list is going to be very, very small. Very, very small. Maybe the Chamber of Commerce, for example. But when you're going after those fusion partners, those joint venture partners, they're going to have bigger audiences. They're going to have thousands of people. They're going to have people that would end up frequenting your business, but they have them in large quantities. So dance studio, martial arts studio, perfect partnership, because each of those could have hundreds, if not even thousands, of students that are coming in and out all day, every day. So they have the ability to send you hundreds of students. The reason that makes up a Dream 100 relationship is that they're not just going to send one family for a few $100s a month. They could do a couple of promotions on your behalf, and they could send 200 students. So now it's 200 or 100 times a few $100s a month. And that's what makes up that relationship. So the first big mistake is you try and go after all three of those audiences. The second mistake is that you go after the joint ventures, but you try and only look for joint ventures that also have the Dream 100 prospects only. Now, after we have that list picked, that's when you've got to do all of the research. And then there were several episodes that I talked about all the research. You're going to find everything about that contact, personally and professionally, all of their social media channels, everything you can find. You're ideally going to have all their work stuff. So continuing with martial arts studio, dance studio. So let's say you're the martial arts studio owner, and you're identifying these Dream 100 potential relationships. So you said, great, we want dance studios, we want childcare centers, we want gymnastic studios. So you identify all those potential places, businesses, and then you've got to dig deeper of, great, who is the owner or multiple owners, maybe the VP of marketing. You identify a couple of contact people at each of those organizations. Now, depending on the size, this is where I've mentioned you have to be nimble. I mean, if you're going after a Fortune 1000 company, there might be 10 different contact people that you're going to have to be going after to warm up multiple relationships to see which of those ends up striking. If you're going after smaller businesses, it might be the owner and or the president, for example. You're not going to have to go after 10 different people at a smaller business. You want to try and go after whoever is highest up on the totem pole. And when you're doing that, you've got to make sure you get everything extremely organized. This takes weeks. This is not a 5-minute process. It can definitely be outsourced. It's a service that we offer, but it needs to be methodical, which leads me to the next big mistake. Is you get these businesses on there and then you rush the research stage. You just throw down their email addresses and you say, I'm not going to send anything physically in the mail. You only put the work social media and you don't put all their personal stuff. You might only list their Facebook account, but in reality, they're more active on Instagram or TikTok. This is a lot of stealth research in this particular stage. You have to leverage multiple tools to find this information. You've got to spend hours and hours and hours getting this list really trimmed down, but it ends up needing to paint a picture of that prospect. So if I go on there and I'm looking for, great, here are the dance studios and here's the name of the owner, and I need to know everything, where they went to college, how many kids they have, where do they hang out. I want to look at all their social media. Where do they vacation? What do they do for fun? How are things going at their business? What are some of their challenges and their struggles? And you're building out that persona, that avatar of who you're going after, so that when you continue in this process of the outreach, your messages are going to be on point. So do not skip the step of methodical and exhaustive research. Get that list honed in and extremely, extremely organized. Now, from there, you've got the list. You've picked one of those audiences. You need to spend a little bit of time cleaning up your social media. This is another step and a big mistake I see people missing. They then start the outreach, and then people start coming to their social media, and you've got typos, you've got old images, you've got political stuff, which is going to rapidly turn people off, especially if they're on the other side of the spectrum, whatever your spectrum is. Your social media, your website, your personal website, your company's site, that stuff needs to be on point. It needs to be congruent. Your messages need to be dialed in. You need to have plenty of updated content. If you're not actively posting on your stuff and your business stuff, people are going to rapidly get turned off. Are they even active? They're starting to comment on my stuff. They haven't posted on their Facebook account in 2 months. Is this a real person? Is this a scam? That is a huge, huge mistake people make. They get all the research done, they start the outreach, and then people visit their social media without them knowing, and they never hear from them. A lot of these people, you get one shot, one first impression. Put your best foot forward. When you've got that dialed in, you can start to move into the outreach, the commenting, and starting to warm these relationships up. So you're going to start to go through your list, and I call it, again, hitting those daily singles. You're going to be commenting across your list of 100 every single day. Now, this is, again, where you need to be a little bit nimble depending on your audience. The reason that I like to start off with every single day is I like to come out of the gates swinging, and I don't like there to be too much delay. If your list is very, very sensitive to kind of promotion, you might have to do it every other day or every 3 days. But if you're going to commit to every 3 days, it's got to be methodical. And what we're doing is we're also altering the account that we're posting on. So I'm not going to go and comment on one of my Dream 100 Relationships Facebook page every single day. I might go on a Monday for Facebook, Tuesday, Instagram, Wednesday, LinkedIn. Maybe I'll jump back to Instagram to Facebook. I vary it up a little bit. So what ends up happening is they're seeing your comments everywhere. They might not be as active on one particular network than they are as another. So I like to try and push more of my comments to where I see them being the most active. And that's going to vary, again, based on your Dream 100. For high professional types of careers or professions, it's going to be LinkedIn, for example. Others, it might be Facebook. A lot of people are more active on X, formerly known as Twitter. You've got to know your audience a bit, but don't forget some of those other channels. The reason that I don't want you to only focus on Facebook is that that's what everyone does. So if they have an active platform on TikTok and you're the only one that's commenting and replying, you're going to get seen very rapidly. And then they're going to notice your comment on Facebook and Instagram, and they're going to start to see this. So it's hitting those daily singles. And where people start to mess this part up is they either go too aggressive. So aggressive meaning they'll comment on a Facebook post and say, would love to connect and see if we could help each other. You've got to warm them up a little bit. You've got to comment with things of value, authentic replies, authentic value. You're trying to build a relationship digitally and just have them notice you. You're not going in for the kill just yet. Huge mistake. That'll start to ruin your efforts immediately. The other mistake is end up losing the consistency. You lose some momentum. You were commenting daily and then you go to weekly. That's why our biggest end and arm of our business is Done For You Dream 100 execution, because very few people can do this consistently. That's why we built our own app and portal to only have the Dream 100 people in it. so it doesn't get confused with all of your other contacts in your CRM, because these people need to be treated very, very differently. They're not just everyday people. These relationships literally have the ability to completely transform your life and business. They need to be treated as such. So as you're commenting, you're hitting those daily singles. That's when you can then start to move into the gifting strategy. And that gifting strategy can be nimble, meaning you can have different gifting limits. You can have certain triggers. If they do X, you're going to put a little gift in the mail. But you don't want to go too extreme right away, so don't send a $500 gift, but also don't send a $10 gift. The magical number for us tends to be $30 to $50 for these initial gifts. And then as you start to move the relationship, the gifts can get to be a little bit more expensive, and they can be a little bit more custom. But even with the $30 to $50 gifts, I want you to customize the gifts. So I talked a lot about in the last episode that we have a pen company. So we get pens that are made of wood from their alma mater, for example, or their favorite sports team, or historical events. Like we have felt that goes onto a pen blank from Amelia Earhart's airplane. We have pen blanks from movie sets and things like that. So we know if they love the Goonies, which my wife does, we have wood from the set of the movie The Goonies. And with that, you put that in the mail with a little handwritten note, and it's casual. I know that you love the movie The Goonies. You've mentioned that on Facebook a few times. I wanted to have this pen made up for you. I hope you love it. The certificate is included so you can see it's authentic. Would love to connect one of these days. Here's my personal cell. Simple. Now, as you start to move with the comments, your outreach can start to expand. You can start to do a little bit more direct response marketing, and you can vary your messages a little bit. But you need to make sure you're still hitting those daily singles, and then you can get an email in the door. You might do a voice message. So on a lot of the social platforms, you can do voice messages. You might record a little video. Hey, this is Michael over at XYZ Martial Arts Studio. I know you've got a dance studio. I would love to talk. I think we can both help each other. Here's my cell phone. Would love to connect. You can throw a video in there. The ultimate strategy that we're seeing immense success with involves you inviting them to your podcast. You inviting them to be a guest on your show to give them exposure. But as this episode, we've talked about mistakes. This is a big one that almost everyone makes, and they don't listen to me here, and then they send an email and say, Michael, I had him on as a guest and it didn't transpire. Having them on as a guest is the equivalent of you breaking the ice in your communication. It's a little bit of a warmer connection. But what you don't want to do, unless they ask, is talk about you or seed the relationship that you're aiming to get. The podcast is all about you promoting them, interviewing them, and then that gives you permission to give them some follow-up emails, showing them, here's how you're going to promote them. You're sending an email out to your database. You're putting $500 of Facebook ads behind it. Here's the edited files for you if you want to use them. You're completely focused on serving them. Now, if they say, tell me about you, hey, I noticed you do X, maybe we could talk, that gives you the in. But if they don't, I want you to continue for at least 2 weeks to serve them. Show them where the episode went live, put a gift in the mail thanking them, and then that gift can have the handwritten card. Greatly appreciate you coming on the podcast. Would love to see if there's some fun ways to work together. Here's my cell phone. If you don't hear back from that, you continue. And that leads me to the last piece of this equation. The number one mistake people make, it's not picking the wrong audience. It's not sending cheap gifts. It's not going in for the kill too soon. It is giving up. It's giving up. I didn't hear back for 4 months. I didn't hear back for a month, 6 months. This is a long-term strategy that literally will transform your life. If you know that and you stick with it, it will literally transform your life. And all of the future episodes that I'm going to be doing, we're going to be talking about how people are deploying the Dream 100, how it's changed their lives, their businesses, other use cases, etc., etc. So I wanted to give you the frame. I wanted to give you, here are the strategies so that you can start to better understand it. And I wanted you to understand where you're going to trip yourself up. And the biggest one is you don't see results quickly, you give up. This is what happens with podcasting. They call it pod fading. You do a couple of months of episodes, you don't see results, you give up. You can read success study and story and statistics one after another about that tipping point where you were doing the same thing day in, day out, day in and day out, and then one day it tipped, and then the rest is history. Most successful people that I know, myself included, will say it was a 20-year overnight success. It's putting in all the work. Yes, you might get some quick wins. Yes, you might have some people that come on your podcast and all of a sudden you've got a relationship, but you need to continue to push and nurture those relationships for as long as it takes, because you will start to have those people tip. They'll send you a message. Michael, I've seen your persistence. You've commented on my stuff for a year. You've sent me 8 different gifts. I love them. I've sent you thank you messages. I was never in the right frame to do something together. I am now. Let's talk. That stuff will start to happen. But if you give up too early, it'll never happen. I promise you, the Dream 100 is your ticket to a better business, a better life, and a better future. Tune in next week. We're going to continue the content. I'm going to keep the train running for you. Grateful that you're listening. So happy that you're here. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night.